Got off on that, did you? You're fuck.
Hey guys, and welcome back to SmokeScreen, and today I'm blessed to have a special guest. His name is Steve Love, and you know him whether you think so or not, especially if you watch this channel. He is an actor, stand-up comedian, and impressionist. And so thanks for being here, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You can add karaoke host, Uber driver, and pro bono gigolo to that list of professions.
I hear you. I hear you. So anyway, Steve and I did get to meet and chat for a few minutes back in 2017 at Con of Thrones, the first Con of Thrones, and we were actually scheduled together to do a panel. The panel we were supposed to do together, Steve, if you remember right, was one on Tyrion Lannister. I think the rise and fall of Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah, I know. I was really bummed that I missed that one because I love Tyrion. I think he might be my favorite character. Well, book Tyrion is my favorite character.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. Show Tyrion for me probably too is definitely in my top 3. So anyway, again, I appreciate you being here, Steve. It means a lot. Trying to go in a different direction, do some behind the scenes stuff, and get you, perspectives from people like you who've been involved in Game of Thrones, and obviously we'll talk about some other acting and stand-up and stuff that you do as well.
Good to be here, man. I even dressed up for the occasion. Like I said, it's a book Tyrion shirt. Right. My mind weapon. Except in my case, my vocal cords are my weapon, and they require much polishing.
It is good to see you again. I've returned to offer you my service. Long have I awaited this hug. Oh, don't mind that, Your Grace. It's merely the pommel of my sword.
Yeah, so that's actually a perfect segue. That's where I was going to start with was impression. You're definitely a great impressionist, and I believe that's what you were known for initially. So I know you started doing impressions on YouTube. You obviously did, Game of Thrones characters, and that led you to Jimmy Kimmel, as well as being on the show itself as an actor. How did you get started in impressions itself? Was it something that you just kind of started doing as a kid? What influences? So how did you get into impressions?
I guess it's kind of innate. It's kind of started with just repeating things from Disney movies as a kid. Repeating, that was something my parents said I always did. I always repeated things ad nauseum, and then that translated to actually sounding like the characters, and then eventually I was like, oh, I can do Stewie from Family Guy, or I can do Gollum from Lord of the Rings, or I can do, like one day you're repeating something you heard in a movie, and the next minute it's like, we must have the precious, like,
right. Yeah, I completely get where you're coming from. That's kind of what I did back in the day. I mean, again, I'm no impressionist now.
You have a great Danny McBride impression. I will give you that.
Yeah, I do actually get that a lot. I've heard that probably more than anything else as far as who I sound like, other than comments about my southern drawl. But yeah, I get that a lot from Eastbound and Down. And one of my favorite lines from that movie is, no, I play real sports.
Doing a lot of running and cycling, swimming. Well, you know all about that.
No, actually, I don't. I play real sports. Not trying to be the best at exercising.
Yeah, there you go. I don't even know whose podcast I'm on anymore.
Yeah, sure. Right. But, I mean, one of the reasons I actually got into them when I was younger was Police Academy. I don't know if you ever saw Police Academy or watched, but Jones was one of my favorite all-time characters, and he influenced me to do impressions and just, noises in general of other things. I freaking love Jones from Police Academy.
Police Academy is way ahead of my time. To be fair, I was into something that was also way before my time, which was Saturday Night Live. We, my brother and I started collecting these best of, SNL DVDs. And the ones that stood out that I really gravitated towards was Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, guys who Mike Myers to a certain extent, but like guys whose specialty was characters and impressions. Like Dana Carvey was like the king of impressions in like late 80s, early 90s SNL. Right. And that's just sort of, sort of gave me an idea of, you know, that people are entertained by that, because it never occurred to me. It's just like something that occurs naturally in me, and that I didn't really think of anybody else appreciating it, but apparently some do.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's definitely an art form, and it's just like anything else. It takes a lot of practice, and like you said, it's your tool.
I guess art has a very broad definition. Then I'll say that.
Yeah, it does, but there's definitely just like anything else, anything that takes practice and work, and you know, like a magician standing in a mirror.
Yeah, it used to be just a party trick. It used to be something I would just do to entertain my shithead friends, you know. But and then when I got to university, it grew and grew to the point where I was doing all these characters, because it would always just be like a random hangout that people would just be requesting things, and I would see if I could do it or not. And it turned out I could do them. And so by like third year university, I had quite a repertoire. And one of my friends said to me, you know, you could put this stuff on YouTube, and I bet you would make a lot of money. And I was like, oh yeah?
Oh yeah.
So I gave it a shot. And it turned out all right. It turned out all right. I could have done a lot better if I had like really concentrated on coming out with new content like week after week after week. But you know, I'm lazy, and I mean, like it's done. It's worked well enough to the point now where like I'm doing stand up and I'm good at stand. Well, you know, like let's not get ahead of ourselves here, but like I'm getting better at stand up, and I'm making a career for myself using this. Just starting from this weird talent and then branching out into joke writing, acting. You start with one thing and it branches out into other things. That's what's happened. That's how the impressions work for me anyway.
So that's what I was actually going to get into though next. As you mentioned, you started a YouTube channel, started doing impressions and putting those up on YouTube and getting some notoriety. And but you came to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And were you just a fan of the show, or it was something?
I took to the show immediately. I loved it right away, because I love what drew me to the show initially was Sean Bean. I hadn't seen Sean Bean in anything since Lord of the Rings, and he's one of my favorites. And so I was like, oh, Sean Bean has this fantasy show on HBO. I was like, I'll check it out. I knew nothing about the Song of Ice and Fire series. But once I watched an episode of the show, I was completely hooked.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, you know, I just started trying out the voices of the characters, and turns out I could do it okay at the start. I could do it well enough that people enjoyed it. Right. Whereas if you talk to anyone from the UK, they'll tell you that Steve Love is shit and that Schaefer Bates is better. But I don't. Doesn't matter. It's as long as the Americans like my impressions, then that's fine with me. And honestly, like I really had no idea how rabid the Game of Thrones fan base is until I put out that video, and then I had the good fortune of having Jimmy Kimmel tweet it out to people, which really helped. Helped my channel branch out to people who wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, that was huge for me. Kimmel's my rabbi. Like I wouldn't have had any of the success I've had in my career, which I mean modest successes. I wouldn't have had any of the modest successes I've had in my career without the help of Jimmy Kimmel. So I owe him a lot. I owe him a lot. Right. I owe him at least a gift bag.
Right. Yeah, send him a
little
goodie bag. Maybe send him one from Kant.
I'm gonna make sure it contains some choice and moisturizers.
There you go. Muffins and moisture.
Muffins and moisturizers. That's a weird combination of things. I don't know why that came to my head.
Right. I'm sure he'd enjoy that though. That was a pretty big break for Jimmy Kimmel, because you know, I was going to get to that as well. YouTube led to Jimmy Kimmel finding you. And that was a pretty big break right there, I would say. And so, how did that come about? I mean, was it where they just found you online? Obviously, Game of Thrones being a huge show, and that drew attention to your channel and your impressions. Mm-hmm. Did they contact you for this contest or whatever?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. There was no contest involved. They just said they wanted to do like a couple of guys who do Game of Thrones impressions, and we'll get somebody from the show on the show. We'll do it. It was never expressed to us that it was going to be a contest of who can do the best Jon Snow impression. I just want to. Let me be clear. I just wanted to make that clear. So what happened was 2 years after the first Game of Thrones video I made. And then in 2014, I did like a season 4 video, and that actually got more views than the original video. And then a couple of months after that, I got a direct message on my YouTube channel that was from a producer at Jimmy Kimmel. The YouTube channel name just said Jimmy Kimmel Live. It just said Jimmy Kimmel Live, and it had no followers, which was a little sketchy to me. I'm like, what is going on? Right. And then it turns out it's just one of these like accounts that ABC creates for the producers to find web content and contact people on the web. So the guy gave me his, ABC email, which is, you can't fake that, and he gave me his phone number. I called him. He said, yeah, we're looking to get some impression guys on the show who do the Game of Thrones impressions, and we'll get somebody from the show on. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get somebody from the show.
Me in. Like, I don't, and they were like, yeah, we're not going to pay you or anything, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I just want the exposure. And I didn't hear back from this person for like 2 months. I got the email in March, and I didn't hear back until mid-May, and he finally says, like, we booked Kit Harington for June 10th. That's going to be your appearance. I'm like, great, awesome. And then so did the thing from the study of my parents' house, and it went well. It looked like. It looked like Kit was moderately impressed by what he was like. I could kind of see in his reaction, like, because obviously I've been whenever people are introducing me to their friends who are into Game of Thrones or whatever, they always pull up the video. They're like, you got to see this. He was on Kimmel. He was on Kimmel. He was on Game of Thrones. So I've seen the clip dozens of times, and I notice every time that like. When Kit hears like the Varys impression, he's like, whoa. And then when he hears the Sam impression where I do the little, he always comes back and he goes wink. Like, yeah. And then right before I do the Jon Snow impression, he's like super excited. He's like, oh, he's going to do an impression of me now. And then like, to be honest, of all the impressions I do on the show, the Jon Snow one is the weakest. So he's like, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, probably related to people hearing impressions of themselves, and so they're not as impressed of hearing themselves.
And I'll tell you straight up, I do real life impressions. Right. And when people hear an impression of themselves, they genuinely find it uncomfortable. They generally find it uncomfortable.
I bet, like it's kind of like a caricature. When you draw a caricature of somebody and you exaggerate that part, they don't really want to see that.
And I've seen like some of my friends, I do very accurate impressions of, and I can see them just being like, like whatever, like very uncomfortable. So like, there's that, but like, anyways, Anyway, I couldn't be happier with how that Kimmel appearance went. I was blessed in that I was able to do characters that weren't just Jon Snow, whereas the other guys were limited to just the Jon Snow impression.
Yeah, so when you were on the show doing the Jon Snow impression, you actually read from a shampoo bottle?
Yeah, and they told me, and for the other ones, they told me just make it up, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, and then you got to do like some extra ones that were like, give us a couple more characters, right? Is that the way it went on Jimmy?
Like I think Kimmel wanted it to be like, well, obviously I have no idea because I've never actually like had a conversation with the guy, but I think he was sort of like, this is the guy that I found, So he wanted to show sort of all the stuff that I did that I guess he found entertaining,
Right. So yeah, very cool, man. I really do have appreciation for impressionists because again,
I appreciate
tried
that.
when I was a kid to do impressions, and then
Who are your impressions
oh
from
man,
your
I
youth?
couldn't even remember now. I did you know, just big celebrities. I know I did like a Sean Connery, for example.
Yeah. You not feel comfortable busting them out on the air, is what you're saying.
Oh no, well I mean I just wouldn't remember how to do them. I don't really get embarrassed, so it's not that. But I had a Sean Connery.
Come on, Moneypenny, it's just completely consensual.
Right, I am the lost. I am the lost dragon.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, so I'm by no means a Steve Love when it comes to impressions. But yeah, so I was going to ask you, did you get into, before Game of Thrones, which is obviously, you know, people on this channel are more interested in the Game of Thrones stuff, but did you get into acting before you ever got on Game of Thrones?
I had already dabbled in acting before the Kimmel appearance. Basically when the Game of Thrones, when Jimmy Kimmel tweeted my initial video, it got the attention of some agent management types who said, you know, you have talent, like you should go into acting. And I was like, okay, I've always wanted to go into acting. I've always wanted to be, you know, like a Jim Carrey or someone like that.
Right.
And like I just started getting into whatever acting scene there is here in Ottawa, and I formed a good relationship with Alona Smythe, who's like the best casting agent in the area, and I got cast in one speaking role before the whole Game of Thrones thing.
Right.
And I was doing acting. I was taking lessons, taking classes. I was starting to, you know, work on my craft a little bit, and then you know, I mean, the Game of Thrones thing was like, whoa, I like it. I like it.
Right. I mean, only the biggest show in the world, so that can't hurt for sure. But you've also been in some other things, right? Before we continue with the Game of Thrones stuff.
Check out The Detective on CBC. Anyone in Canada this? I'm going to be on a CBC show. It'll be airing sometime in October, I think. I actually don't have a set date for my episode of The Detectives, but I will be playing a murderer. Oh, wait. Okay. Spoiler. Fuck.
Very cool. That's what I was going to get into next was not just the Game of Thrones thing, but you've been in some other productions, according to your IMDb page.
Yeah, no, my first film credit was Tell the World, which may or may not appear on my IMDb page. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
And then then I did Game of Thrones, an episode of a CBC show called Bellevue, and then I did a Lifetime made-for-TV movie called A Daughter's Revenge. This was after Game of Thrones. I did a show called A Daughter's Revenge.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to bring up is A Daughter's Revenge, which I believe a 2018 TV movie, and Reliving Maryland, which is another TV movie for 2018, I believe.
Reliving Maryland was a low budget, very low budget, local independent Ottawa film, where the actress playing Marilyn Monroe has a very distinct French Canadian accent. And I did an episode of The Detectives, and I'm also going to be appearing in a movie called The Truth About Christmas. You can check that out. I think it's on the Hallmark Channel. I'm not sure.
Oh, very cool.
Assuming it'll be around Christmas time.
Yeah, likely due to the title. Yeah, very cool. So the impressions, again, you know, they led to YouTube, and YouTube led to Jimmy Kimmel, which led to Game of Thrones, and you being actually on the show as part of the Brotherhood Without Banners, where I believe you actually played a character named Steve. Is that right?
They credited me as Steve just so everyone would know that I didn't actually audition for the role and like get it through the proper channels. They wanted everyone to know that it was a gift.
Right. Oh, interesting.
I'll just tell you the story of how I got how the show thing came about. I did the Kimmel appearance.
Yeah, sure.
And then the next day did a couple of Canadian news programs like Canada AM. I did the local CTV channel. I did CBC Radio. Because, you know, it's not every day a local Ottawa boy, you know, gets to be on American TV. So I did a few media appearances for that.
Oh, sure.
And then the next day I was headed up to my cottage, or my family's cottage, with a bunch of friends, and I was I was, checking my emails. I look and there's an email. The subject line just says "Hello from Game of Thrones," and the senders are Dan Weiss and Dave Benioff. And I open the email and it says basically, hey, we've been watching your impression. It's Dan and Dave here, the creators the writers of Game of Thrones, and we've been watching your videos for a year, laughing your asses off for years now, and seeing you on Kimmel reminded us of you, and we wanted to know if you'd be interested in doing a scene on the show. Either way, thanks for all the laughs. As if I would say no, right? Like, as if I would be like, no, my time is too important for your little dog and pony show you call Game of Thrones. But
exactly.
They said either way, thanks for the laughs. They even made a reference to one of my, which I thought was just the most darling thing ever. So, how in the first Game of Thrones video I do the Jorah Mormont impression. I say stuff like, "My man Inflef a check and a 9 at my crib, Khaleesi."
Yes, Biggie.
Quoting Biggie Smalls' lyric.
"My man Inflef a check and a 9 at my crib, Khaleesi."
And so what they said in the email was, we've been trying to get Jorah saying, "My man Inflef a check and a 9 at my crib, Khaleesi," into the show for years now, but it remains elusive.
Yeah,
and I thought that was the most adorable thing they could possibly say. So I was like celebrating with all my friends. It was a great time.
Oh, no doubt.
And then I told my agent about it, and she was like, these are just Gmail accounts, right? This could be somebody fucking with you.
That's true. I was going to say, you might think about spam or something, like just being...
I never thought, I didn't think about it because, I have just what I would refer to as just a simple faith in success. And I said, no, I don't see why anyone would do that. But she looked into it, my agent did, and it was all legit. And then, over the next couple months, it was like top secret NDA,
right,
like non-disclosure agreement signings and measurements sent over for the wardrobe. And it finally sent me a top secret script with top secret names in the script.
Right.
So they didn't want anyone knowing that the Hound was coming back.
Exactly.
So
this is the time when, it was a big secret.
In the script, the Hound's character his name in the script was like Harland.
Harland.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, and I'm reading the scene, and I'm like, this Harland character reads a lot like the Hound. And it turns out that was who I was working with, and working with Rory McCann was such a treat because he's just an amazing guy. As soon as I mentioned he was from Canada, he was like, "Oh, I spent some time in Toronto. I had my first shag there," or something like that. And
first shag,
I don't know. And then he was such a great guy. My dad was coming over. He came over because it was shooting in around Belfast. My grandfather was from Northern Ireland, so my dad made the trip over, and we did some sightseeing over there. We explored a bit, but my dad got to visit the set, and I had previously told Rory that my dad's coming to visit. His dad is from Northern Ireland, and I didn't think he would think anything of it. But when my dad came to the set, Rory was there, and he was all like, "Oh, hey, Robin, how are you? Oh, I'm Rory. I hear your father was from here." Like, just going out of his way to be super nice to a person he has absolutely no connection to, other than that, me and him worked together on this thing, and it just is so heartwarming. And my dad talks about it to this day of how nice a guy he was. And
and that actually was basically my next question was, give us an idea of what it was like, shooting that scene you know, behind the scenes. You know, you mentioned Rory, of course. I was going to ask exactly that. You know, how is it working with him? And as far as the comedy element of the scene, obviously, you know, the finger and the bum, which is probably, you'll hear that the rest of your life, I'm sure. As far as how was that all scripted, or was that something that was more, you know, ad-libbed or whatever, or was that written in the script, like that comedy scene?
Yeah, I just saw a Reddit post. Yeah, that was all in the script. That's exactly like script. That's like word for word the script. Right. And I was like, this is the kind of scene that they would give me, because I had asked them, you know, if you're gonna put me on the show, at least give me like an epic death scene. And they were like, that's exactly what we had in mind for you. And they didn't mention to me that before we kill you, we are gonna have Ricky Champ stick a finger up your butt. And when I read the scene, I thought, this is perfect. This is so what my role in Game of Thrones is going to be.
Right. Yeah. Very memorable scene.
It was a lot of fun, man. And the guys, the other guys in the scene that I worked with, Ricky Champ, Ian Davies, and I call him Ross the Boss McKinney, who was the other young guy in the scene. Ross McKinney was a guy who was, you know, like a grip, like a production assistant, a guy who was just like, you know, working with the production, not on the acting side of things. He sort of answered the call when they said, so like, yeah, we need a young guy for this. Want to be an extra? And he was like, sure. And then it became like, well, you're going to be, you're not just going to be you're not going to be an extra. You're going to be like a non-talking on camera. And then on the set, on the day, he goes up to the director, Mark Mylod, and he says, you know, maybe when we're having this little discussion here, maybe I should say this. And so he managed to parlay what was an extra role into a speaking role on Game of Thrones. Like that's why I call him Ross the Boss. He was just a cool guy, man. Yeah, it was a fun group we got to work with, and everybody that works on that show, the nicest people. Top to bottom, that production is just like made of just great people, and really top to bottom, like the nicest crew I've ever worked with.
Actually, it's funny you say that. When I interviewed Will Mahal, I don't know if you know him or not, he was on here a couple weeks ago, and he's the guy who owns the Direwolves.
That's a man right there.
Summer and Grey
He
Wind
works
in
with
season
Direwolves. That's a real man right
there.
Yes.
Yeah, he actually said the same thing, because he was also an extra along with his family in many seasons and many scenes, and he really hammered on how nice the production people were. So very cool. So now, so you've done the Game of Thrones thing, you've been into the acting thing, you're still doing some stuff with that, but now you're really into primarily, I believe, stand-up comedy. Is that right? How did you get into comedy? Was it kind of a natural progression?
I love stand-up comedy from a young age. I used to watch Just for Laughs, which is like the Canadian comedy festival in Montreal. They televise sort of the best of clips of that, and it would be something that would play on our TV stations, you know, in the afternoons after school. I would watch that a lot. I never really saw myself as a stand-up comic, but then I realized that it was one of those branches of the tree that was going to spring, like we talked about, one of the branches of the tree that was going to come from doing the impressions. And I started doing it in 2015. The first time I did it, I was like, this is for me.
Oh, very cool. The first time.
Like, I really feel comfortable. Like, there was like a lot of people who aren't, you know, used to getting up in front of people and talking, like, the idea is scary to them, but I just felt very comfortable. Like my first time doing it at an open mic at a comedy club, and since then, I mean, you know, having the credits definitely helps. Like when you know, when you're doing a comedy show. When you're putting on a comedy show and you have the opportunity to bring somebody up with, this guy was on Jimmy Kimmel in Game of Thrones, it lends a lot of credibility to your show.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
that makes sense.
As a promoter, as a manager, as a whatever. I'm really listen to what people say. I mean, maybe my comedy is not the most sophisticated, like joke writing wise, but it typically brings the thunder.
Right.
So and obviously I can't back this up with video evidence at the time now, because I don't want to burn my material by putting it all online.
Sure.
But
sure.
I love doing stand up. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah, so that's exactly kind of what I was going to say. It seems like to be just another branch of that tree in entertainment, so to speak. And obviously, with the impression thing, I mean, you can do a lot with that. Obviously, I'm assuming you work in a lot of impressions into your comedy, because you have, you know, with the Game of Thrones thing, you have the characters saying like modern day outlandish, crazy, funny shit. So I'm assuming that would be part of your act.
Yeah, my style of comedy is just like if I can work an impression into that, great. But it's mostly joke writing. Like what makes my impressions work is not that I'm just doing an accurate impression of a celebrity or a character. I've got that celebrity or a character saying ridiculous shit that makes you laugh.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's sort of what I do in my comedy, and I just like I don't really hold that higher an opinion of myself as a comic, but I realize that it's something that like the longer you do it, the better you get. Like you're like I've heard people say, if you're 6 years into your comedy career, you're still shit. You're not like you're not good at comedy until you've done it for like a long time, you know?
Right.
And
right.
I'm 3 years in now. And it's going all right for me, but you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Sure, yeah, yeah, like anything worth doing. So yeah, very cool. So you have the acting thing going on, you have the stand-up comedy, obviously the impressions of what you were initially known for, but now it looks like you're kind of also switching gears in the acting realm a little bit, and you're going to be doing, according to your Instagram page I was checking out, you're going to be in a theater production now of It's a Wonderful Life. Is that right?
I am doing a theater gig here in Ottawa, at the Ottawa Little Theaters community theater, but it's going to be a huge production, and like a 2-week run of shows, which sounds crazy for me, of, you know, doing a, you know, 90-minute play every night for 2 weeks seems like a lot. But I'm playing George Bailey in an Ottawa Little Theater production of It's a Wonderful Life, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be great, and I'm doing it for myself and for my dad, because we would watch this movie every Christmas Eve from time immemorial, you know, and I'm really excited about it. It's looking like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so very cool. So yeah, congrats on that. I mean, it looks like you're doing all the things you want to do, and like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But you're getting there, and hell, you've already been on the biggest show in history, regardless of how big the part was. I mean, it's an important part, I think. So you're moving on up, and I believe also you're doing some other things. You emceed some stuff here at Con of Thrones in 2018 in Dallas.
I emceed the cosplay fashion show. And that was a good experience too, because like I mean, through comedy you sort of move up to hosting the shows, and then like I found that like hosting a cosplay show is not that different. You just sort of got to like keep the energy going, keep the show moving forward, but also, you know, take time to, you know, talk to everybody, and you know, because the cosplays is like they all make their own stuff. They put in hundreds of hours of work on these costumes, man, just to show up at these cons and strut their stuff. It's remarkable.
A ton of time, absolutely.
And they look great. They all look great. They
do. They do. They're outstanding. Anyway, so yeah, you got a lot of stuff going. Where do we see Steve Love going from here? You got the comedy thing going. You can continue with that and acting in the theater. Where can we find Steve Love, and what's he got planned for the future?
Check out my YouTube channel,
sure.
Dr. Steve Love. I've got a new campaign of videos coming out. I know I haven't posted stuff in a while. I just posted something now, and it's a scene of me reenacting Gandalf and Bilbo scene in Fellowship of the Ring.
Right.
And
saw that yesterday. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that, I mean, maybe play it at the end of the episode. But like, I have a Robert Baratheon scene coming up, some more stuff coming down the pipeline that'll just be like me reenacting scenes from famous movies and TV series, and then I plan on focusing on stand up mostly. Acting work, you kind of have to just take it as it comes to you. I'm working on writing a writing scripts, whatever I can get, whatever comes to me. I sort of just like do that, and just like keeping my nose to the grindstone with stand-up comedy, keep trying to get better, and other than that, just keep your eyes peeled on my YouTube channel, because that's the easiest way for people in other parts of the world to access me.
Sure, absolutely. And we'll definitely link all your stuff in the description below. That'll be links to your
Appreciate
YouTube.
That.
Yeah, sure, no problem. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all that good stuff. So really cool to have you on, man. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. We've been talking about this for probably a couple months now, so really appreciate you coming on and giving us your perspective in the background. And again, I'll link everything in the description below. But where can we find you as far as your social media and all that good stuff?
Everything is my YouTube channel, my social media. Everything is Dr. Steve Love.
Okay, very cool. Yeah,
I did a podcast. I did a podcast once where I got chirped for shitty branding, so I just branded myself as Dr. Steve Love. Dr. Steve Love.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, just because I noticed everything was Doctor. When we followed each other 2 years ago or whatever. While it was Doctor Steve.
My rapper name in middle school, because I was in middle school when 8 Mile came out, so all my friends had rapper names.
Right.
My rapper name was Dr. Love. So So now it's just Dr. Steve Love is a little less cringy. But yeah, Dude, thanks for having me on, man. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for letting me. You're really good at just letting me pontificate about the experiences I've had in my life. It's really great.
Oh, no problem, man. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just trying to change direction. I appreciate you being here, man. I know you're busy. We've been talking about this for a while. Really appreciate you coming on, man, taking your time, and enjoyed it. So hope to have you again sometime. We can do it again, and I'll link everything in the description again for anybody listening. So yeah, check out Steve on YouTube. Again, as he just mentioned, he's got some new stuff coming out with impressions. Steve, maybe we'll get to chat again at Kind of Thrones 2019.
Yeah, any idea? Yeah, there's still no word on where the next Kind of Thrones is going to be.
No official word. No official word. I've heard some rumors, but that's they're rumors, so I won't mention it online. But anyway, I've heard some rumors, but nothing's in stone. So
all right, makes sense. All right, SmokeScreen. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Appreciate you being here.